So far as riches go, and nobleness, were she a queen in question, or princess, you would be worthy, when the moment came, either of you to marry, all the same, speaking as for my sister Emily, the cause of all your strife and jealousy. You are aware yourselves that she can never wed both at once, though you should fight forever, and one of you, come joy to him or grief, must go pipe tunes upon an ivy leaf. That is to say, she cannot have you both, however jealous you may be or loath. And so, to put the matter in good order, let destiny herself be your recorder, and shape your fortune. Listen to this close, for here is the solution I propose. My will is this, to make a flat conclusion, and end all counterpleading and confusion. And you will please to take it for the best, that each shall take his freedom east or west, and without ransom or threat of war, and the year later, neither less nor more, each shall return, and bringing 100 knights, armed for the lists, and everything to rights, ready by battle to decide his claim to Emily. To this I give my name, my faith and honor, as I am a knight. Whichever of you proves of greater might, or more precisely, whether you or he, backed by the 100 knights allowed by me, can drive his foe to stake, or take his life, to him I shall give Emily to wife. To whom kind fortune gives so fair a grace, I'll build the lists upon this very place, and God in wisdom deal my soul its due, as I shall prove an even judge and true. There is no other way, let that be plain. One of you must be taken or else slain, and if this seems to you to be well said, think yourselves lucky, sirs, and nod your head. That's the conclusion I've decided on. Who looks delighted now but Palamon? Who springs up rejoicing but Arcite? And who could tell what poetry repeat? The joy of all those present in that place, that Theseus had vouchsafed so fair a game. Down on their knees went everyone in sight, returning thanks with all their heart and might, especially the Thebans. Time on time, thus, in good hope, with bearing heart a climb, each took his leave, and they began to ride to Thebes, and to her ancient walls and wide. Part 3. I judge it would be held for negligence if I forgot to tell of the dispense of money by the Duke, who set about to make the lists royal show throughout. A theatre more noble in its plan, I dare say, was never seen by man. It had a circuit of a mile about, well walled with stone. There was a ditch without, shaped like a circle, there it stood complete, on tier, the height of 60 feet, so that a man set in a given row did not obstruct his neighbor from below. Eastward there stood a gate of marble white, and westward such another rose in sight. Briefly, there never was upon the face of earth so much within so small a space. No craftsman in the land that had the trick of pure geometry, arithmetic, portraiture, carving, and erecting stages, but Theseus found him and supplied his wages, to build this theatre and carve devices, and to observe due rites and sacrifices. Eastward he built upon the gate above an oratory to the Queen of Love, to Venus and her worship, and he dressed an altar there, and like it to the west, in reverence to Mars, he built a second. The cost in gold was hardly to be reckoned. Yet northward, in a turret on the wall, he built a third, an oratory tall, and rich, of whitest alabaster set, with crimson coral, to discharge the debt of worship to Diana of chastity. And it was thus that Theseus built these 3 temples in great magnificence of style. But yet I have forgotten all this while to tell you of the portraits that were there, the shapes, the carvings, and the figures there, to grace these temples high above the green. First, in the sight of Venus, you had seen, wrought on the wall, and piteous to behold, the broken sleeps and sighings manifold, the sacred tears, the lamenting songs, and every fiery passion that belongs to those that suffer love, the long endured, their taken oaths, their covenants assured, pleasure and hope, desire, foolhardiness, beauty and youth, lasciviousness, logris, philtres and force, falsehood and flattery, extravagance, intrigue, and jealousy, gold garlanded with many a yellow twist, that had a cuckoo sitting on her wrist, stringed instruments and carols, feasts and dances, joy and display, and all the circumstances of love, as I have told you and shall tell, were in due order painted there as well, and more than I can mention or recount. Truly, the whole of Cytherea's mount, where Venus has her dwelling above all, her other playgrounds figured on the wall, with all her garden in its joyful dress, nor was forgotten her porter idleness, nor yet Narcissus, beauty's paragon, in times gone by, nor doting Solomon, nor the unmastered strength of Hercules, Medea and her enchantments next to these, and Circe's too, and Turnus fierce and brave, and rich King Croesus, captive and a slave, that men might see that neither wit nor wealth, beauty or cunning, bravery or health can challenge Venus or advance their worth against that goddess who controls the earth. And all these people captured in her noose cried out, alas! But it was little use. Suffice these few examples, but the score could well be reckoned, many thousands more. Her statue, glorious in majesty, stood naked, floating on a vasty sea. And from the navel down there was a mass of green and glittering waves as bright as glass. In her right hand a cistern carried she, and on her head, most beautiful to see, a garland of fresh roses, well above there circled round her many a flickering dove. Cupid her son was standing to behold her, fronting her statue, winged on either shoulder, and he was blind, as it is often seen, and bore a bow with arrows bright and keen. Why should I not go on to tell you all the portraiture depicted on the wall within the temple of mighty Mars the Red? The walls were painted round and overhead, like the recesses of that grisly place, known as the temple of great Mars in Thrace, that frosty region under chilling stars, where stands the sovereign mansion of King Mars. First, on the walls, a forest with no plan, inhabited by neither beast nor man, was painted, tree trunks knotted, gnarled, and old, jagged and barren, hideous to behold, through which there ran a rumble and a soughing, as though a storm should break the branches bowing. Before it, downwards from a hill there went a slope, the temple of Omnipotent. Mars was erected there in steel and burnished, the gateway narrow and forbidding furnished. A ghastly sight, and such a rushing quake raged from within, the portals seemed to shake. In at the doors of a northern glimmer shone. On to the walls for windows there were none. One scarce discerned a light, it was so scant. The doors were of eternal adamant, and vertically clenched, and clenched across, for greater strength, with many an iron boss. And every pillar, to support the shrine, weighed a full ton of iron, bright and fine. And there I saw the dark imaginings of felony, the stratagems of kings, and cruel wrath that glowed an ember red, the pink purse that the coward pale with dread, the smiler with the knife beneath his cloak, the outhouses that burnt with blackened smoke. Treason was there, a murder on a bed, and open war with wounds that gaped and bled, dispute with bloody knife and snarling threat. A screaming made the place more dreadful yet. The slayer of himself, I saw him there, with all his heart's blood matted in his hair, the driven nail that made the forehead crack, the death stone cold and gaping on his back, and death stone cold and gaping on his back. And in the middle of the shrine mischance stood comfortless, with sorry countenance. There I saw madness cackling his distress, armed insurrection, outcry, fierce excess, the carrion in the undergrowth, slit-throated and thousands violently slain I noted, the raping tyrant with his prey o'ertaken, the levelled city gutted and forsaken, the ships on fire dancingly entangled, the luckless hunter that wild beasts had strangled, the sow devouring children in the cradle, the scalded cook who had too short a ladle, nothing forgotten of the unhappy art of Mars, the carter crushed beneath his cart, flung to the earth and pinned beneath the wheel, and also on whom Mars has set his seal, the barber and the butcher and the smith, who forges things a man may murder with, and high above, depicted in a tower, sat Conquest, robed in majesty and power, under a sword that swung above his head, sharp-edged and hanging by a subtle thread, and Caesar's slaughter stood in effigy, and that of Nero and Mark Antony. Though to be sure they were as yet unborn, their deaths were there prefigured to adorn this temple with the menaces of Mars, as it is also painted in the stars, who shall be murdered, who shall die for love. Such were the portraits on the walls above. Let these examples from the past hold good, for all I cannot reckon, though I would. Mars in a chariot was carved, and clad in armor grim and staring like the mad. Above his head there shone with blazing looks 2 starry figures named in ancient books. Puella one, the other Rubius. The god of battles was encompassed there. There stood a wolf before him at his feet. His eyes glowed red. He had a man to eat. Subtle the pencil was that told this story, picturing Mars in terror and glory.